Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to David's Den. I'm David and I make videos about Stephen King, his novels, his short stories, and any adaptations that were made for film or television. And that brings us to today, where I'm doing the top 10 insert appropriate expletive moments of Chapelwaite episode 5, The Prophet, or as I like to call it, episode 5. A well-timed information dump with an homage to King's literary style. You guys, I'm serious. So many things have been teased in the first 4 episodes and so many questions have been asked. And now here we are at episode 5, halfway through a 10-episode season, and we're about to get an information dump with all of these answers. It couldn't be more perfectly timed to keep our interest and raise new questions, not about the exposition side of things, but about what's going to happen moving forward. It's a great shift and a great time for it, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. First, I have to tell you that there will be spoilers ahead. If you didn't know, Chapelwaite is based on Jerusalem's Lot, which is a short story by Stephen King found in the collection Night Shift, which is actually a prequel, Jerusalem's Lot, not Night Shift as a whole, but the story Jerusalem's Lot is a prequel to the novel Salem's Lot, which was released a few years before. And I'm going to be talking about how all of this lines up. Chapelwaite, Jerusalem's Lot, Salem's Lot. So spoiler warning for all of that. You've been warned. Here we go. 1. Could he do any worse than this? Oh, talk about a burn to her father, we think. But we're going to get there in a second. So we start the episode with Charles talking to Loa and saying, please tell me what Stephen said to you last night when we discovered that my dead cousin is actually a vampire living in the walls, and you had a nice little chat with him, and he started to win you over. And she says, he said he could take me to see Mother, and he can make me well about the rickets in her leg, the trouble she has walking. So those are the 2 key points, but first I want to talk about taking her to see her mother. This started some wheels turning in my head because Charles says, we can't be weak, we have to be strong right now. And Loa comes back with, why is missing Mother a weakness? And I think it's appropriate to take time to grieve. And we heard in the last episode, when Honor is defending her father, telling Abel that he's not going mad, she says he's just not the same. None of us are the same since my mother passed. And he never grieved, which is true. He immediately looked out for his children. He moved them to Chapelwaite, got them off of the ocean, got them into school. It's all been for the benefit of his children. He never stopped to grieve his wife. And Loa is the only one that's kind of still holding on. I mean, they're all sad. It's all still fresh. But Tane and Honor seem to be acting, quote unquote, normally, I guess. And Loa and Charles are descending into grief further and further. And it made me wonder, is this whole thing an analogy or a metaphor for the descent into grief, Charles's descent into madness, into the darker side of our psyches and our emotions? If you remember later on in this episode, Jacob's going to say many things live in the shadows. So it just got me wondering, and I'm gonna pay attention to that moving forward. This whole thing may actually be a metaphor for grief, similar to Ari Aster's Hereditary, which is a metaphor for mental illness being passed down genetically. Kind of relevant to this too. I could have used any example, and that's one that came to my mind. There was obviously a reason. But then Lois says, Stephen told me he could make me well about her leg. Charles says he can't do that. And imagine, as a child who has been given hope, who doesn't fully understand that there are limits. Oh, it's just driving such a wedge between Loa and the rest of the family, specifically Loa and her father. And it's not going to go well. You can just tell. We talked about this a little in the last episode breakdown. I wondered if maybe she was going to be the first vampire to be turned from the family. First family member to be turned into a vampire is what I'm trying to say, if I want to say things in the correct order. But Charles says, stay away from Stephen, he means you harm. And Loa comes back with, could he do any worse than this? Oh my God. And for about a half second, you see it in Adrian Brody's eyes, in Charles's eyes. This is the first moment, while Brody has turned out an amazing performance so far, this is the first moment that I jumped out of my seat and went, bravo, Brody! Oh my God, such a brilliant moment of an actor living in the moment where the realization changes with us, the audience, with this paradigm shift. She says, you just see her kind of, her face, and she says, could he do any worse than this? And Charles is on his way out the door and he turns around like, you mother ungrateful child, I've been the best parent I can be to you. And then the camera moves a little bit and Loa's looking at her leg. And he realizes, oh, she meant her physical disability, not my parenting. Oh. What a beautiful moment on the acting side of things. Now, the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to this scene is when Loa says, "And I see the way you look at Rebecca." Oh, of course, we're still talking about the wedge here. We have this young girl who doesn't want her mother to be replaced. She's still grieving her recently deceased mother. And here comes Rebecca, and she's afraid that Rebecca's going to end up being her stepmom. So that plays into the wedge. But while we kind of got hints, right? Call me Charles, please call me Rebecca. I was kind of hoping that they weren't going to go this route. Sex sells, so it seems like writers and producers always try to give us a love story, and there isn't one in the original Jerusalem's Lot short story, and I'm worried that it's going to get in the way of the Chapelwaite story. I like these characters, I like them for one another, so I kind of am rooting for them to be together, as long as it doesn't get in the way of the plot. I don't want anything to be contrived. Jury's still out. 2. I know of Jerusalem's Lot. Okay, so here comes our first information dump. In the previous episode, the cliffhanger was Jacob wants to see you tomorrow, Charles, in Jerusalem's Lot, from that sexy, sinister apple girl. So now we're in this kind of atrium place that I've never seen before in the Chapelwaite house. And Charles says, I have to go. If Jacob has the answers, I need them so I can protect my family. The answers to the madness that he's descending into that plagues his family. He says, I know of Jerusalem's Lot. This used to be my grandfather's old mining town. To which Rebecca then comes in with, they've told stories about James Boone to scare children away from Jerusalem's Lot, even though it's a deserted town. I didn't think anyone lived there. And now here comes Abel saying, a couple of years ago, and if you've been following my episode reactions, you know that the 2-year mark it has been very important. So he says, a couple of years ago, Philip and Stephen had me start running lumber out to Jerusalem's Lot. I never went into town, but I could see they were building the church or finishing the church, refurbishing, making it look pretty and nice again. So we're getting these seeds of what has been happening in this town, Jerusalem's Lot, that is supposedly deserted, that has ties to the Boone family, and that we now know is a half-day journey away. 3. The Curse of the Boons by Rebecca Morgan. Oh, shit. As if Loa didn't have enough to worry about, besides don't go snooping through other people's private room. Loa. She finds the manuscript that Rebecca is writing, her story that she's selling to the newspaper. Of course, later on, when she's confronted, Rebecca says it's meant to be fiction, and Honor says, well, it doesn't read like fiction. They're all mad at her, but at this moment in the story, because I try to go in episode order, although things always layer on top of each other, because it's good writing, and the mosaic is pieced together. The tapestry is kind of woven in a way that helps us understand and keep the suspense. And in that scene later in the bed, we get Loa saying, do you want her to be our mother? I know we all like her, but come on now. Just read it for yourself. And she says, I want to go back to the island. Wait a minute. I call bullshit. I call bullshit. When were they on the island? In an earlier episode, Tane says they were born at sea. So what's been set up for us is that Charles is a whaler. Somehow he met this woman who is from the Kingdom of Hawaii. They got married, and she went out to sea with him. And with Loa and Tane's age difference, if she was born on the island and then went to live on the whaling ship, she wouldn't have remembered the island if Tane was born at sea. I call bullshit, Filardes. First time you've let me down. Okay, yes, I know, I can rationalize that they would go live on land for a while, then go out to sea, and then I get it, maybe it's not such bullshit, but I was hurt. 4, honorable. Okay, I love this. I saw online a few days ago, I think it was Trina Corkum, who plays Mary Dennison, that shared it on some platform. Someone from the show posted something with Honor and Abel, a screenshot, and asked if their name should be Abel Honor or Honorable as a shipping name. And I f***ing love Honorable. And now here we are. We've had these cute moments before of, she tries to kiss him, and then, do you like me? And now she's giving him a hug as the family is separating. The kids are going into town to stay at Rebecca's mother's boarding house. And Abel is going to Jerusalem's Lot with Charles. And They say, watch out for each other. And there's this, the cutest, sweetest, tiny little hug and peck. And Charles sees it. So will he approve? Won't he approve? I don't think the racial thing is going to be a problem for Charles outside of him being concerned for them with the public. And he's treating Abel nicely. I think he has high opinions of Abel. He trusts him with the family. Go get your shotgun and help protect us, right? Here's a raise for doing the books. You know, bravo, you self-taught yourself to read and write. So I'm for this. Honorable. Let's go. But side note, right before Rebecca gets on and they drive away, look at Loa's face. You stay away from my father, you imposter. Ah, so good. 5, you weren't meant to find them. So the doctor is back with the Dennisons, and Mary is sick in bed. And if you remember in the last episode, the constable found the bite marks behind her ear. And here comes the doctor saying, well, I know they're bite marks, and I know they're not human, but it's a very strategic place for them. For what? For bloodletting. Which doesn't come out of nowhere, by the way. We saw him bloodletting Susan in a previous episode before she passed. So we know this is the era of medicine we're dealing with. And the constable just realizes, you weren't meant to find them. Somebody is a predator. Whoever was in the house, he's not quite believing that it's Philip Boone, like Rebecca said to him, because Philip Boone is dead as far as he's concerned. But he's realizing that there's a predator. Somebody has been attacking her. I guess I was over on this side earlier. Let's stay consistent, David. Maybe he's been attacking both sides and we only saw the one. I don't know. So he's been, and actually I think it was her left side in the show. I don't know why I'm obsessing over this, but suddenly it matters to me. So yeah, bite marks over here. You weren't meant to find them. And that means that the constable is starting to move over toward Charles's side. Remember, we talked about him being the referee between the town, tradition, and progress, the Boons, and how they're clashing, and the constable is keeping peace between them in the town. Well, I think he's starting to get onto Charles's side now, especially because he goes to the house and he finds the blood out front. Of course, he doesn't know it was from the night before and the suicide from the acolyte. He walks around the property and he sees the freshly dug grave where Charles dug up Stephen's coffin to see if he was actually in there. So, yeah, the constable is kind of starting to switch sides, I think. 6, this will sound mad. Okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. I'm so excited. This is what I'm going to call the King recap. Stephen King writes these really long books, and Salem's Lot is pushing around 600 pages, I think. And I noticed this first in Salem's Lot, because the only book before that, it was his second published novel, was Carrie, and Carrie is really short, really quick. It's a very fast read. Everything piles on top of itself very quickly. Salem's Lot is a slow burn, which is kind of what we're getting in Chapelwaite, only I think things are moving a little faster, but we're getting the information doled out in that slow burn. So every now and then he'll have a character kind of go, wait a minute, I was driving and I was thinking about what Mark said to me. And I was thinking about that time that Susan and I were having dinner, and I was thinking about, and he just in a very natural, not put on way at all, not forced in the storytelling, recaps the information for us and makes the connections that we need and spells it out before we move forward in the story. And if you remember in the very first episode reaction, we talked about Rebecca Morgan as an author being the spokesperson, the mouthpiece for the author, which Stephen King always has in one of his books. It was both Mark Petrie and to an extent Ben Mears in Salem's Lot. I think it's Cal in Jerusalem's Lot, the manservant that doesn't exist. Well, I guess maybe he's Abel in Chapelwaite. Anyway, here comes Rebecca Morgan as that mouthpiece. Rebecca walks into her mother's boarding house and she says, okay, look, you're gonna think this is mad, but these crazy people came to Chapelwaite last night. They said that a guy named Jacob, a name that I saw in the letters from father to the Boons, wants to see Charles over in Jerusalem's Lot tomorrow. And to top it off, Philip and Stephen faked their own death and they're living in the walls of Chapelwaite. I need to see those letters. So we get this fantastic recap. Moving forward, we're going to get more recap and some more information, like the fact that Jacob was brought into town against the Boons' wishes, that they've been looking for this book, and we finally get the name of the book, De Vermis Mysteris, The Mysteries of the Worm, which is a book. in the short story Chapelwaite, but how Waite come about it is much different. And we learn that her father came back to Maine 2 years ago, again with the 2 years, right? Everything is 2 years. That's when this started. We're learning that's when Jacob was brought to town. And Rebecca's mother got a letter from her ex-husband's new wife saying, have you heard from him? Because he came to Maine and never came back to New York. He just disappeared. But what I really want to talk about is the homage to Salem's Lot here. The lore of someone having to invite a vampire in, either to the physical location like the house, or to the town itself. Kurt Barlow couldn't come to Salem's Lot until Larry Crockett dealt with all of the real estate dealings. I'm doing this because they were having phone conversations, as if you could understand that. So Larry Crockett helps him get the house and moves Kurt Barlow into Salem's Lot. He invites him. Well, in this case, it was Rebecca's father inviting Jacob into Jerusalem's Lot. Oh, I love the keeping with the lore and the nod to the original novel, even though it's based on the short story prequel. 7, that cursed child. Oh, I love what they're doing with Alice and Martin Burroughs, the minister, and his wife. And I called it in the last episode reaction. I said their love probably died with the children. And now here we are. Alice is blaming Martin for murdering their children. I never wanted that cursed child around my babies. And of course she means Marcella Boone, who is one of their playmates. So we're getting into the Boons bringing the illness into town, which we're now learning is vampires feeding on people and taking them to the edge of death, which is why they're pale and confused. We don't know how Marcella plays into it yet, but the twins have died and she blames Martin. And then Jenny Raymond, I sang your praises in the last episode. Reaction, you know how I feel about you. Repeat everything I said for this episode reaction. She just says without even looking at him, I could love that child. Meaning Faith's deformed child that Minister Burroughs, Alice's husband, has fathered. Did you stray? Is it your child? Yes, it is. And then he just leaves? What the hell, man? Like, you preach love and forgiveness and you have all these wonderful Christian ideals, and then you just leave that conversation? I'm wondering if this is meant to be a slight kind of reverse mirror of Father Callahan in Salem's Lot, who had completely lost his faith. He was an alcoholic, a priest who had no belief in the faith anymore, who had to re-find his faith in order to fight the vampires. And his fate, which I'm not going to give away, you have to read Salem's Lot for that, is what the man. Oh, I love Father Callahan. And he had to leave Salem's Lot, just like we know Minister Burroughs is going to be leaving Preacher's Corners with Faith. And the mother of his child is named Faith, for sake. 8. All that you believe is madness. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting the information dump. Charles gets to Jerusalem's Lot. He tells Abel, ride back, don't come with me, which is very similar to Charles in the short story trying to evade Cal, his assistant who's trying to stop him from going to Jerusalem's Lot. Cal finds out about his plans to sneak out, and he puts a sedative in his tea so he can't do it. I love Cal. He's just so practical. But he doesn't exist here. In this instance, in Chapelwaite, Charles is saying, Abel, don't come with me into Jerusalem's Lot. And he rides into town, and there are all of these deathly pale apple girl looking people everywhere. He sees the worm that doth corrupt written on the side of a tent, which is what he saw written on the wall in the shut-up violin room back at Chapelwaite. And he walks into this church, very dimly lit. And as he goes down the aisle, we see people on racks that are being bled and used by these vampires for food. It's really f***ed up, and it's really kind of amazing. But I want to contrast this with the church in the short story Jerusalem's Lot. Charles goes to town with Cal the first time, and they find a completely empty town. These wraith-like looking things aren't there, and the church is not desecrated. Well, it is, but it's still pretty much put together. The pews are all in a row, but the cross is upside down, just like the cross we get behind Jacob in Chapelwaite. And a picture of the Madonna and Child has been desecrated, but nothing is there. except for the book. De Vermis Mysteriis is sitting on the pulpit. And as he starts to read, they feel something kind of shake the ground and they run away. There's another visit where the church is torn apart, but we're not going to get into that because it may be spoilers for something coming up later in Chapelwaite. I don't know. I haven't watched past episode 5 yet, but in case it is, I'm not going to get into that part of Jerusalem's lot yet. So now we're in this really dark, dimly lit church, and as he slowly walks toward this dark figure at the front, we get this mosaic of Faith talking to Minister Burroughs. And she's saying, you told Alice the truth about us, and now you deserve the truth. I was an orphan, and I got by as a young girl by being a prostitute, and there was one man named Jacob who was unknowable. And you can't imagine the ecstasy of being his food and being brought to the brink of death and being brought back time and time again. She has like a pseudo-orgasm as she's explaining it. So we now know that this is what these people in Jerusalem's lot are being used for. They're being used for food, for, I guess, a sustainable resource. We learn through Faith that Jacob believes in an original God, a God from before the time of Minister Burroughs' God and Satan, before the Christian God, which is what Charles asks him later, when Jacob says, we have our own gods. And he said the name of this God was the worm. So things are starting to be pieced together for us. And we know now from Faith that Jacob is on a quest to raise this God, to raise the worm. And I have to take a moment to stop and say, I love the no, our gods came before that. Because there is a line in Salem's Lot where they almost find Barlow and he gets away, and instead in this coffin they just see a letter written to the vampire hunters that go find him. And one of the things he writes, specifically in his section to Father Callahan, I was strong when this simpering club of bread eaters and wine drinkers who venerate the sheep savior was weak. My rights were old when the rights of your church were unconceived. Which then brings me to our first look at Jacob, because I have a question about design. So we talked before about how the vampires in this are giving a fantastic nod to the makeup effects of Salem's Lot, the 1979 miniseries adaptation. But I had a huge problem when I did my adaptation correlation for that, because Barlow is supposed to look like this young, virile, suave-looking dude who happens to be a vampire with these fangs. And now we get this bald, blue, Nosferatu-looking thing. Well, Jacob has virtually no hair. Philip and Stephen still have full heads of hair. Do vampires age? If we ignore the fact that we redesigned the vampire look from the book, did Chapelwaite just justify the makeup for Kurt Barlow, who says in the book, so I guess you can't ignore it, that he's older than God? The Judeo-Christian religions? Is that why he can't talk anymore and why Jacob is so slow and soft spoken? Where Stephen and Philip seem to be basically still alive and just gray with fangs. Interesting. So a couple of the things that we learned from Jacob. A miner founded the town of Jerusalem's Lot and unearthed a stolen text. So it was stolen from Jacob and his kind at some point and buried, I guess, in Jerusalem's Lot somehow in the past. All we're concerned with is that a miner found it, which we know was James Boone. And that harkens back to the opening scene where they're at the church in Jerusalem's Lot, and Silence Boone is saying, Father, that book is evil. It's corrupt. Look what it's done to you. And he's saying, I have to get the worms out. These poor worms. I'm going to kill you before God dies. So we know that James Boone went insane. And Jacob tells us that he thought he could harness the power of the book that he found, De Vermis Mysteriis. And one of the ways he does this is by taking, what did Jacob say? The blood of our organs. So I guess he somehow killed the vampires and took their organs and used it to write his name in the pages of De Vermis Mysteriis, which then cursed his family line. And we see the book lying on the ground when Silence Boone tries to string up her children and commit suicide when a young Constable Dennison finds them. The book has been going down the line and everyone has been going mad. And Jacob says, when I finally came here, I recognized the madness that was in your family. All that you think is madness is my book calling to you. Just open yourself up. It will show you where it is. It will guide you to it. Bring me the book, and the madness will be relieved from you and your children, which we of course know is the driving force for Charles, is to protect his children. So it turns out that Philip and Stephen had this book. Here comes Jacob. He wants the book. They say, I'll only give you the book if you turn me into a vampire. And he says, okay. So I fed on them. I let them drink my blood. Now we know that's the cycle that turns people into vampires. They don't turn just from being fed on. They have to be given the vampire blood. That's pretty classic lore from Bram Stoker and Rice. And then suddenly the book was stolen somehow from the Boons. At first I thought they were playing a trick on him. They were trying to con him, right? No. Book is still ours. Thanks for making us vampires. But if you remember in the previous episode, as Stephen's about to get shot and have that Mike Ryerson moment falling out the window, he says, find the book, cousin. So they really don't know where the book is. And now we have Jacob searching for the book, and we have Stephen and Philip Boone searching for the book. And why can't they find it anymore? Only living Boons hear its call. And now they are the undead. So Jacob says, I was going to kill them for their betrayal, and then they told me you existed. And they wrote that letter to you, Charles, and they brought you here and got you wrapped up in all of this simply so we could find the book. And I can help you. I will relieve the madness. Just bring me the f***ing book. And Charles says, no, I can't. I've seen what the madness does to my family. I was almost buried alive for f***'s sake. He's thinking of his kids, and Jacob says, okay, well then fine. Bring him in, and here comes Rose and Abel trapped as a threat, like we're gonna kill these people. And Charles says, no, I'll do this for you. And they still kill Rose. And he says, I will get you the book. Abel is saved. Talk about an information dump that answers so many questions and sets up the war that we're about to be having. At least that's what it seems to be setting up. Episode 6 came out a few days ago, and I haven't watched it yet because I wanted to get this video shot so it didn't sway anything I said to you. I'm dying, guys. It's been 3 days and I haven't watched episode 6 yet. No, seriously, Sebastian Lebel. Okay, but seriously, from an adaptation standpoint though, this information dump that we get kind of answers questions that were left in Jerusalem's Lot. So let me give you a quick breakdown. In Jerusalem's Lot, Stephen also, gets a letter from his cousin saying that a letter from his cousin's lawyer rather, saying that his cousin has passed and they've left Chapelwaite to him. He lives somewhere else. He's not a whaler. His wife has died. He has no children. He shows up and they start realizing that the town, Preacher's Corners, doesn't like them, and they don't know why, they being Charles and his manservant Cal. Charles does start hearing these rats in the walls, as does Cal, and they say, well, those are some pretty big rats. I'm not sure if they are rats. And I've already talked about their trip to Jerusalem's Lot. There's a part where the sawmill won't send them any lumber, so I'm sure that's where the idea of the Boons owning a sawmill came from. He's actually met at gunpoint by the guy who owns it. Charles is. But Charles and Cal do go down to the basement at one point, and it is Randolph? No, what's his name? Yeah, Randolph. They find Marcella and Randolph living in the walls. There's a great moment. I didn't write the quote from the book down. I should have. They turn around and see the undead living in the walls, and Cal recognizes them as being Nosferatu. So we get Marcella and Randolph living in the walls being the undead. And there's something in the ground at the end of the story that could play into the vampire lore, but that's all we get. So this breadth of the vampire story and what's been happening at Preacher's Corners and over the last 2 years is really a creation of the minds of the Filardi brothers and the rest of the writing team. I think they actually filled in the gaps and the questions that were not plot holes because it wasn't what the plot was about in Jerusalem's Lot, but they have answered who the f*** these people are. But then it also makes me wonder, is Marcella a vampire? Because in the short story she was, at least for half a second. I miss my daughter, and if she was a vampire, she'd be there with him, unless she was taken away somewhere. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's going to be another moment. 9. She's mine now. In a direct reflection of the Ned Tibbets or Floyd Tibbets, because for some reason they couldn't keep his name the same from the book Salem's Lot to the miniseries Salem's Lot. He attacks our protagonist in that book and he gets arrested. While he is trapped in a jail cell, here comes Kurt Barlow to turn him into a vampire. So now here we get Constable Dennison putting his wife into a jail cell with a cross and saying, "You'll be safe here," setting her up to be trapped, and he's waiting at the window for whoever has been visiting the last few nights and biting Mary. It's on the left side. So he hears a noise from inside the house. He goes back down to the jail cell, and there's Mary feeding on Philip's wrist. So we now know, just after we heard from Jacob, she is being turned into a vampire by Philip. And he says, "She's mine now." And he tries to attack the constable, who stabs him in the neck with a crucifix that smokes. Thank you so much, because there's a huge reference to the EC horror comics and everything glowing or smoking in the story Salem's Lot, so I appreciate that nod. He runs away. Philip runs away. And Constable Dennison goes back to his wife and puts his hand out, and she's like, "What? I'm very confused. There's a ton of blood on my face. Why is my mouth sticky? What just happened?" So I guess she doesn't immediately turn into a vampire, but we know she's on the way, unless she didn't get enough blood to be turned from Philip. Something's going on with Mary and the constable and vampires and Philip, and I'm here for it. 10. There is no greater sorrow. Loa has once again run away from her siblings. She has, I guess, walked all the way from Preacher's Corners back to Chapelwaite. We know it's possible because we saw Susan Mallory do it in a previous episode when she was in her bloodlet trance. And Loa gets there and we hear the violin music. The same melody that we heard in the cold open from the last episode, which was Philip playing it. And Stephen says, "My father, Philip, taught me how to play and I taught Marcella." And he's in the room and he's put all of Marcella's old toys around and he says, "I miss my daughter." And he turns to Loa and he says, "There is no greater sorrow than for a parent to lose a child." Oh, shit. What is he about to do? What? Is he turning into a vampire? Because that's what we were thinking, maybe. So as if to keep us guessing, here comes Honor and Rebecca, and they show up at the house, and they don't find her. They just see an open window, which has kind of become our sign that a vampire was at the house. Then we get Charles riding back from Jerusalem's Lot. It's daybreak, and he comes across Loa's body. Oh, shit. There is no greater sorrow for a parent than to lose a child. Oh, that one kind of got me here. But I have to wonder, is she going to be waking up soon? Right? Because if we're going with the Salem's Lot lore, Danny Glick's grave was open during the daylight, and he just stayed there until the evening shadows came, and then he, entrancing Mike Ryerson, and then he got up and he bit Mike Ryerson. So it's possible that maybe she is a vampire and was just left there for him to find and think she was dead. I'm guessing that she's really dead if Stephen's daughter is dead. But why would he kill her? Does he blame Charles for Marcella's death somehow? Is it retribution? Is it just to say, "Hey, I mean business. Find me the fucking book and don't give it to Jacob"? Does he know that he was with Jacob? And why is Philip creating these other vampires instead of just feeding on people? Is it to create an army for whatever war is about to happen between the Boons and Jacob? Because if you saw the vampires that fed on Rose Mallory, all Jacob did was a little with his finger, and they attacked, and they were kind of... And in Salem's Lot, we get these vapid creatures who only exist to do the master's bidding, to do Barlow's bidding, to do the bidding of the person who turned them into a vampire. So is Philip going to be the master for Mary? Is that part of the lore still there in Chapelwaite? I don't know. A lot of questions. I have to go to physical therapy. I'm 15 minutes late leaving for my appointment, and I have to put all my lighting away. Damn it. And then I have to go to work, and when I get home, I'm watching episode 6. Holy Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Top 10 Oh Shit Moments in Chapelwaite, episode 5, The Prophet. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching Chapelwaite, if you have any thoughts, please comment down below. I've been having some great discussions with some of you guys on here. If you want to follow me on all my social media, my channel is called David's Den because I also post a lot of pictures of the cats and the hamster, and I have lots of other endeavors. Everything's down below in that link tree in the description. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the episode reaction for episode 6 coming up as soon as I can get this one done, I promise. And like the video, share it with your friends that are also watching Chapelwaite, and I will see you guys next time.